Toby Adewale was the only son of Chief Adewale, one of the richest men in Lagos. Their mansion stood high on the hill, overlooking the city lights that never slept. From the outside it seemed like Toby had everything a young man could ever want: wealth, fame, and respect. But deep inside he felt something missing. Every day he woke up to luxury but not to love. Every person around him, from his friends to women who smiled at him, only cared about his father's money. Whenever he went to parties, girls rushed to sit near him. They complimented his shoes, his car, his designer clothes, but none of them asked how he really felt. They wanted to be seen beside him, not to know him. Toby would smile politely, but inside he felt like a shadow living someone else's life. He wished, just once, to meet a person who would talk to him like an ordinary man, not the son of a billionaire but just Toby. One evening he drove through a crowded market street. His driver slowed down because of traffic. Toby looked out the window and saw a young man pushing a wheelbarrow full of fruits. The man slipped and fell and his oranges rolled everywhere. Instead of helping, two young women standing nearby laughed loudly. "Look at him," one said. "So dirty. Who would even marry a man like that?" The other giggled. "He should find a rich lady to rescue him." Toby's heart sank. He looked again at the young man, sweating, embarrassed, yet quietly picking up his fruits. Nobody helped him. Everyone just stared. Something inside Toby changed at that moment. He thought, if people can laugh at a poor man like this, then maybe kindness is truly rare. That night, Toby sat in his room looking at his reflection in the mirror. He saw a handsome young man dressed in fine clothes, but he didn't feel proud. He felt empty. "Would anyone ever love me if I looked poor?" he whispered. His voice echoed softly in the large, lonely room. He remembered his father's words, "Son, money can buy comfort but not love." Now he finally understood. He made up his mind. He would go out into the real world, not as Toby Adewale, the rich man's son, but as a simple, struggling young man. He wanted to see how people would treat him without his family name or fancy cars. The next morning he packed a small bag, left a note for his father, and quietly left the mansion. He went to an area on the edge of the city, a noisy, busy place filled with mechanics, traders, and market women shouting prices. The air smelled of smoke and fried plantain. He walked around until he found a small, old workshop. "Are you hiring?" he asked the owner, an older man with oil-stained hands. The man looked at him suspiciously. You don't look like someone who knows how to fix anything." "I can learn," Toby said. "I just need a chance." The man laughed but gave him a test, to help lift a car tire. Toby struggled but didn't give up. The man smiled. "You have strength. Fine, you can start tomorrow. But I pay little." "That's fine," Toby said happily. He rented a small one-room house nearby. It had a wooden bed, a weak fan, and a window that barely opened. But to Toby it felt peaceful. No servants, no luxury, just quiet simplicity. He bought cheap clothes, rubbed some grease on his face each morning, and went to work like every other mechanic boy. Nobody recognized him. Nobody called him sir. For the first time he felt free. Life was not easy. His hands became rough, his clothes always smelled of oil, and his back ached at night. But he learned quickly. The other mechanics joked with him, calling him fine boy, because even with dirt on his face, his manners were too gentle. He laughed with them and ate roasted corn by the roadside. One afternoon, while resting, he saw a young woman walk past the workshop. She carried a sewing machine on her head and smiled kindly at everyone she met. Her name was Amara, and she worked as a tailor in a small shop nearby. She often greeted the mechanics, saying, "Good afternoon, my brothers," in her soft, cheerful voice. Toby noticed that she didn't look down on anyone. Even when others teased her for helping poor children with free sewing, she just smiled and said, "Kindness costs nothing." Toby admired her heart, but he kept his distance. He didn't want to ruin his disguise. Days passed and Toby started seeing life through new eyes. He saw how hard ordinary people worked. The woman who sold beans under the hot sun, the old man who fixed shoes for a few coins, the children who laughed despite hunger. These people had so little, yet they shared everything. It touched him deeply. One evening after a long day, Toby sat outside his small room watching the sunset. The air smelled of rain and children played football barefoot in the dust. For the first time he smiled from the heart. He realized that true peace didn't come from money or fame, it came from living among people who were real. Yet deep inside he wondered, would anyone here ever love him for who he truly was? Not as a rich man, not even as a poor mechanic, but as just Toby? He didn't know that soon fate would test that question, and the answer would change his life forever. Toby woke up early each morning to the sound of roosters and the noise of people rushing to work. The small community where he now lived was full of life. Children ran barefoot in the streets, women sold breakfast by the roadside, and men pushed carts filled with goods. It was nothing like his father's quiet mansion. Here, everyone struggled but everyone smiled. He wore the same faded jeans and torn shirt every day. His hands were always covered in grease from fixing old cars. People in the neighborhood soon gave him a nickname, Toby the Broke Boy. Some said it with laughter, some with pity, but he didn't mind. He knew why he was there. He wanted to see how the world treated a man without money or fine clothes. At first life was hard. His body ached from the heavy work and sometimes he went to bed hungry. But he also felt something new, peace. Nobody expected him to be perfect. Nobody followed him for his name. He was just another young man trying to survive. One day while he was cleaning tools outside the workshop, he heard a soft voice behind him. "Good afternoon, my brother," the voice said. He turned and saw a young woman smiling kindly at him. She carried a basket filled with cloth and sewing thread. Her name was Amara. She was a tailor who worked in a small wooden shop nearby. Her clothes were simple, but her smile was warm. Toby wiped his hands and greeted her back. "Good afternoon." She nodded politely. "You work very hard. I always see you here even when others rest." Toby smiled shyly. "Work keeps me busy. It is better than doing nothing." Amara laughed softly. "You speak like an old man." From that day she greeted him every morning when passing by. Sometimes she brought roasted corn or a small bottle of water to share. While others called him the broke boy or ignored him, Amara treated him with respect. She didn't care that his clothes were dirty or that his shoes had holes. One afternoon it started to rain heavily. Most people ran inside, but Toby stayed under a tin shade, waiting for the rain to stop. Then he saw Amara struggling to cover her fabrics from the rain. Without thinking he ran to help her. Together they pulled her fabrics into her shop and closed the door. Both of them were soaked from head to toe. "Thank you," Amara said, laughing as she tried to squeeze water from her dress. "You're welcome," Toby replied, smiling. "At least your work is safe." She looked at him curiously. "You don't talk much, do you?" Toby shrugged. "Not everyone likes to listen to a poor man." Amara frowned. "Don't say that. Your worth is not in your pocket. It's in your heart." Her words stayed with him long after he left her shop. That night, as he lay on his small wooden bed, he thought about how rare it was to meet someone who spoke with such kindness. He smiled to himself and whispered, "She is different." Days turned into weeks and Toby and Amara became friends. Sometimes she came to the workshop to fix her sewing machine, and Toby helped her without asking for payment. Sometimes they sat outside her shop and talked about life. She told him about her dream, to open a big tailoring school where young girls could learn skills for free. "Not everyone can go to school," she said. "But everyone deserves a chance to build a better life." Toby nodded. "You have a big heart, Amara?" She laughed. "Maybe. But dreams need money and I have very little of that." Toby wanted to tell her that money was not her problem, that he had more than enough to make her dream come true, but he couldn't. He was still hiding who he really was. He wanted her to see only his heart, not his wealth. In the neighborhood, people started to notice their friendship. Some teased Amara, saying, "You and that broke boy, are you planning to marry him?" Others warned her, "You are wasting your time. Poor men bring only problems." But Amara never listened. "He is kind and hardworking," she said. "That is what matters." Toby admired her courage. Many people would have cared about what others thought, but Amara lived by her own truth. She respected everyone and believed in the good in people. One evening when the sun was setting and the sky was orange, Toby sat outside the workshop with Amara. The air smelled of fried yam and smoke from the food stalls. Children were laughing and playing nearby. "You know," Toby said quietly, "people laugh at me sometimes. They call me the broke boy." Amara looked at him. "Let them laugh. Even rich men are laughed at for something. People will always talk. You just have to live your own life." He smiled. "You sound wise." She smiled back. "Wisdom comes from pain. I have seen hard days." She told him about her life, how she grew up with her grandmother after losing her parents, how she learned to sew by watching other tailors, how she saved every coin she earned. Toby listened carefully. For the first time, someone was speaking from the heart, not pretending. When he walked home that night, he felt lighter. For years he had met people who spoke only of money and status. But Amara was different. She spoke about kindness, hope, and hard work. She reminded him of what really mattered in life. Still, a small part of him was afraid. What if one day she found out who he really was? Would she still treat him the same? Would she believe he had lied to her? Those thoughts bothered him, but he pushed them aside. One Saturday, a little boy from the street ran into the workshop, crying because his toy car was broken. The other mechanics laughed, but Toby took the car, cleaned it, and fixed the small wheel. The boy smiled widely and said, "Thank you, Uncle Toby," then ran off. Amara, who had been watching from her shop, called out, "You have a good heart, Toby. You care about everyone." He felt shy and just nodded. But deep down he was happy. For the first time, someone saw his real self. Not the billionaire's son, not the rich heir, but just a kind man trying to do good. As the weeks passed, Toby realized that he was no longer pretending to be poor. The disguise had become a part of him. He had learned to live simply, to value people, and to find joy in small things. Each morning, when Amara greeted him with a smile, he felt something he had never felt before: peace. He didn't need fancy cars or designer suits. In that small community, surrounded by laughter and simple people, Toby began to discover the true meaning of love and life. He didn't know what the future would bring. But for the first time he was not afraid of it. He was learning that real love doesn't care about riches or names. It grows quietly like a flower in dry soil, surviving on kindness and truth. Toby and Amara grew closer as days turned into weeks. What started as a simple friendship slowly became something deeper, something that warmed both their hearts without either of them saying a word. Each morning when Amara passed by the workshop, she smiled and waved at him. That small gesture became the brightest part of Toby's day. At the workshop, the other mechanics teased him. "Toby, your tailor friend will soon sew you a wedding suit," one of them said with a laugh. Toby only smiled and shook his head. "She's just a friend." But deep down he knew she was more than that. She was the only person who made him feel seen, not as a billionaire's son in disguise, not as a mechanic, but as a human being. Every afternoon, when work slowed down, Amara would bring food from her shop: rice and stew or roasted yam. She always made sure there was enough for both of them. "Eat," she would say, "you work too hard." Toby often refused at first, not wanting to take what she needed for herself, but she would insist. "It is not good to eat alone," she would say, smiling. They talked about many things while they ate. Amara spoke about her childhood in the village, how she used to sew clothes for her dolls using old pieces of fabric. She laughed as she remembered her grandmother teaching her how to use a needle for the first time. "I still have the first shirt I made," she said proudly. "It was crooked and ugly, but I loved it." Toby listened, smiling. "You have worked hard for your dream. That's something to be proud of." Amara looked at him curiously. "And what about you? What did you dream of before becoming a mechanic?" Toby paused. He couldn't tell her that he grew up surrounded by luxury and private schools. So he said softly, "I just wanted to be useful to people. To do something that helps others." "That's a good dream," she said. "You're already doing that. You fix people's cars so they can go to work. That's something." Toby looked at her and smiled. She had a way of making even the smallest things seem meaningful. As time passed, they began to spend more time together. When Amara's sewing machine broke, Toby came after work to fix it. When Toby was late at the workshop, Amara brought him food. They laughed, shared stories, and comforted each other after hard days. One evening, Amara found Toby sitting outside his small house, staring at the sky. She sat beside him and asked, "Why do you always look at the stars?" He smiled faintly. "Because they don't change. Rich or poor, everyone can look at them. They remind me that life is bigger than what we see." Amara nodded. "I like that." She was quiet for a while before saying, "Sometimes I feel like I'm running in circles. I work hard, but I'm still here, still struggling." Toby looked at her gently. "You're not failing, Amara. You're building. Slowly, yes, but it's real. The ones who rush lose their way." She smiled at his words. "You always speak like an old man. And you always speak like hope," he said softly. Their bond grew naturally without force. There were no big promises, no lies, just small acts of care. Toby would carry heavy fabric rolls for her. Amara would mend his torn shirts. Sometimes they didn't even talk much. Just sitting together after a long day was enough. But their closeness also brought whispers in the neighborhood. Some people started talking behind their backs. "Amara should be careful," a woman said. "That mechanic boy will never have money." Another added, "A fine girl like her should look higher. Love won't pay rent." Amara heard the gossip, but she ignored it. When her friend Kemi warned her, she simply said, "I don't care what he has. I care about who he is." Toby noticed how people talked, and though it hurt him to see Amara judged, he stayed silent. He wanted to prove himself through actions, not words. Every day he worked harder at the workshop, trying to earn more, even though he didn't need the money. One Saturday afternoon, a man brought his car for repairs and shouted at Toby for a small mistake. Amara, who was nearby, stepped in. "Please, sir," she said politely. "He's fixing it with care. It will take only a few more minutes." The man calmed down, and after he left, Toby said quietly, "Thank you for standing up for me." Amara smiled. Friends look out for each other. That night, Toby couldn't sleep. He thought about how easily Amara had defended him, how she saw him even when others didn't. His heart felt warm but also scared. What if she found out who he really was? Would she feel betrayed? He wished he could tell her the truth, but something held him back. He wanted her to keep seeing him this way, simple, honest, and ordinary. The next day, Amara brought him a small gift, a brown wristband she had made herself. "For you," she said, smiling. "To remind you that even hard days pass." Toby looked at it closely. It was simple, made from thread and fabric, but to him it looked like gold. "I'll wear it always," he said sincerely. They laughed more as days went by. Sometimes, Amara would tell jokes from her childhood, and Toby would laugh until his stomach hurt. Other times they would sit quietly while the city noises filled the air, the honking cars, the shouting traders, the music from nearby shops. In those quiet moments, Toby realized he didn't miss his mansion or expensive life. He only wanted this: peace, laughter, and someone who truly cared. One evening when the sun was setting and the sky turned red, Toby walked Amara home. She carried a small bag of fabrics and they talked about life. "Do you believe in true love?" she asked suddenly. Toby thought for a moment. "I believe in honest love. The kind that grows slowly like a seed." Amara smiled. "Then maybe we both believe the same thing." When they reached her shop, she turned to him and said softly, "Thank you for being my friend, Toby. You remind me that good people still exist." He wanted to tell her that she was the one teaching him what goodness meant, but he just nodded and smiled. As he walked back home, the evening wind blew gently, and he touched the wristband on his hand. It reminded him of her, simple but strong, like love that didn't need fancy things to shine. Their friendship had become something beautiful, built on trust, care, and honesty. Neither of them said the word love, but it was there, in their laughter, their silence, and the small things they did for each other. In the quiet of his small room that night, Toby whispered to himself, "If love feels like this, then maybe it is real after all." It was a bright Saturday morning and the workshop was full of noise as usual. Hammers hit metal, engines roared, and men shouted instructions to one another. Toby worked quietly, wiping sweat from his forehead. He was happy. Life had become simple and meaningful. He still lived as Toby the broke boy, but in his heart he was rich in peace. That morning, Amara had promised to visit after finishing a delivery to a client. She wanted to show him a new dress design she had made. Toby smiled when he thought about it. He didn't know what their relationship was exactly, but he knew one thing: his days felt brighter because of her. While waiting, he decided to take a short break and went to buy cold water from a nearby shop. The small television inside the shop was playing a news program. The shopkeeper and a few customers were watching. Suddenly, Toby froze. On the screen he saw his father, Chief Adewale, standing in front of microphones, giving a speech about a new real estate project. And right beside him stood Toby himself, clean-shaven, wearing a fine suit, smiling at the cameras. The old video had been recorded months ago at a business event. The reporter said, "Chief Adewale and his son, Toby Adewale, continue to expand their company's success across Africa." Toby's heart raced. He quickly turned and walked away, hoping nobody in the area noticed the resemblance. But his fear had already become real. A few men at the workshop were whispering when he returned. "Did you see the TV?" one asked. "That boy looks just like our Toby." Another laughed. "Maybe he has a twin brother somewhere." Toby forced a smile and pretended not to hear. But he knew it wouldn't take long before someone told Amara. And indeed, only a few hours later, everything changed. Amara was at her shop, measuring fabric for a customer, when her friend Kemi rushed in, holding her phone. "Amara, you won't believe this," she said breathlessly. "What is it?" Amara asked, frowning. Kemi showed her the screen. It was the same news video. "Look, isn't that Toby? Your mechanic friend." Amara looked closely. Her hands began to shake. The man on the screen wore a dark blue suit and smiled confidently beside his father. It was Toby, the same eyes, the same voice, the same gentle smile. Her heart pounded. She wanted to deny it, but the truth was right in front of her. "That's him," Kemi said. "He's the son of that billionaire, Chief Adewale. So he was pretending all this time? I told you there was something strange about him." Amara didn't answer. She felt cold all over. The room suddenly seemed smaller, the air heavier. She turned off the phone and sat down quietly. She couldn't believe it. The man she had trusted, the one who ate with her, laughed with her, shared stories about life, had been hiding the truth all along. By evening the entire neighborhood was talking. Some laughed, saying, "So Toby was a rich man all along. Who would have thought?" Others said, "Poor Amara, he fooled her completely." Amara didn't come to the workshop that day or the next. Toby waited, hoping she would at least look at him, but she didn't. Finally he decided to go see her. When he arrived at her shop, she was inside, packing some fabrics. Her face looked tired, and her eyes were red from crying. "Amara?" he said softly from the doorway. She turned sharply, her voice cold. "Why are you here?" "I need to explain," Toby said, stepping closer. "Please, just give me a few minutes." She shook her head. "You had months to tell me who you really were. But you didn't. You made me believe you were poor, you let everyone laugh at you, and you lied to me." Toby sighed. "I didn't mean to lie. I only wanted to find someone who would love me for who I am, not for my father's money. I never planned to hurt you." Amara's voice trembled. "Do you know what it feels like to trust someone completely only to find out they've been pretending? You made me believe we were equals, but all that time you were testing me like a game." Her words cut deep. Toby took a step back. "It was never a game, Amara. You're the first person who made me feel human again. You saw me, not my name." She looked away, tears filling her eyes. "Then why didn't you tell me? You could have trusted me." "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that once you knew the truth, everything would change." She wiped her eyes. "Well, you were right. Everything has changed." She turned her back and continued folding fabrics. The silence between them was painful. Toby stood there for a few moments, hoping she would soften, but she didn't. Her heart was broken. Finally he whispered, "I'm sorry," and walked away. That night, Toby sat in his small room, unable to sleep. His secret had destroyed everything he had built. The simple life he loved, the peace he had found, the bond he had shared with Amara, all gone. He thought about her words again and again. She was right. He had been selfish. He had thought only about his test, not how it might hurt someone who truly cared. Meanwhile, Amara lay awake too. Her heart was torn between anger and sorrow. She remembered his kindness, his laughter, the way he fixed her sewing machine, the way he looked at her with honesty. But then she remembered the video, the fine suit, the luxury, the lie. She felt foolish for trusting him. Days passed. Toby didn't come to the workshop anymore. Some said he went back to his mansion. Others said he left the city. The mechanics missed him, but they knew he wouldn't return. Amara tried to forget him, but it wasn't easy. Everywhere she went, something reminded her of him. The street where they used to talk, the bench outside her shop, the sound of laughter from the children he used to help. She still wore the brown wristband she had made for him, though she told herself it meant nothing now. One evening as the sun went down, she sat outside her shop, watching the sky turn red. She whispered to herself, why did he have to lie? A small part of her still believed he hadn't meant to hurt her, but her pride wouldn't let her forgive him yet. At the same time, Toby stood on the balcony of his father's mansion, looking at the city lights below. Everything was back to how it used to be, luxury, comfort, servants waiting on him, but he felt nothing. The house felt colder than ever. He thought of Amara's laughter, her simple meals, her kindness. He missed all of it. He wanted to see her again to explain properly, but he didn't know if she would ever listen. He knew he had broken something precious, trust. And trust, once broken, is not easy to rebuild. As night fell, he whispered into the empty air, Amara, I'm sorry. I only wanted to find real love. I just didn't know it would cost me yours. Both of them lay awake that night, miles apart, yet thinking of the same thing, how love can build a bridge between two hearts, but one lie can make that bridge crumble. Several weeks passed after Amara discovered the truth about Toby. The small neighborhood had returned to its usual rhythm, but something had changed. The laughter in Amara's shop wasn't the same. She worked quietly, barely speaking to anyone except her customers. Her smile was gone, and even her sewing machine seemed slower. Sometimes she would stop working and stare at the wristband she had made, the one Toby used to wear. She had tried to throw it away many times but couldn't. Each time she looked at it, she remembered his kindness, how he used to fix things for people, how he always helped children, how he listened when no one else did. A part of her still believed his heart was pure, even if his actions had hurt her. But she couldn't admit that aloud. Toby, on the other hand, had returned to his father's mansion. He tried to live his old life again, fancy dinners, business meetings, and polite greetings. But everything felt meaningless. The luxury that once impressed him now made him feel trapped. He missed the noise of the workshop, the smell of engine oil, and the taste of roasted corn Amara used to share with him. Most of all, he missed her laughter. His father noticed the change. "Toby," Chief Adewale said one evening, "you seem lost. What troubles you?" Toby sighed. "I made a mistake, father. I hurt someone I care about." The old man nodded slowly. "Then go and make it right. Money can build houses, but only truth can rebuild hearts." The next morning, Toby made up his mind. He dressed simply, not in his usual expensive clothes, but in the plain shirt and jeans he used to wear at the workshop. He got into his car and drove to the small neighborhood where everything had begun. As he entered the familiar streets, people stopped to look. Some whispered, "That's him, the billionaire's son who pretended to be poor." But Toby didn't care. He parked near Amara's shop and walked the rest of the way. His heart pounded as he saw her sitting behind her sewing table, focused on her work. She didn't notice him at first. The sound of her machine filled the air. He waited a few moments, then spoke softly. "Amara." She looked up, surprised. For a second she froze. Her eyes widened and the sewing machine slowed to a stop. The silence between them was heavy. She finally said, "Why are you here?" Toby took a deep breath. "I came to say I'm sorry, truly sorry." She looked away. "You already said that before. Sorry doesn't fix lies." "I know," he said quietly. "But I didn't come here with excuses. I came to tell you the truth, all of it." He stepped closer, his voice calm but filled with emotion. "When I left my home months ago, I wasn't trying to deceive anyone. I just wanted to understand what love and kindness meant outside of money. Every woman I met before only wanted my family name or my father's riches. But when I met you, everything changed. You treated me like a person, not like a prize. You shared food with me even when you had little. You defended me when people mocked me. You made me see what real life looks like. I didn't lie to hurt you, I hid because I wanted something real." Amara's hands trembled as she listened. His words were honest, his eyes gentle. But her heart still held pain. "Do you know what it felt like, Toby?" she said quietly. "To look at you and realize the man I trusted wasn't who I thought he was? You made me feel like a fool." He nodded slowly. "I know. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But I promise you this, every word I said to you, every smile, every moment we shared was real. You changed me, Amara. Because of you, I see people differently. Because of you, I learned that true love doesn't live in big houses, it lives in small acts of care." She looked at him for a long time. He wasn't wearing fancy clothes or showing off wealth. He looked simple, humble, just like the Toby she had first met. For the first time in weeks, she saw the same sincerity in his eyes. She sighed softly. "You should have trusted me enough to tell me the truth." He smiled sadly. "You're right. I should have. I was afraid to lose you before I even had you." A small silence followed. Then Amara stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold. "You hurt me deeply, Toby," she said. "But I can see that you're not the same man who came here pretending to be poor. You've learned something." He nodded. "I've learned that love isn't about what you have, but about who you are when no one is watching." She turned to face him again. Her expression softened. "And I've learned that forgiveness doesn't make you weak. It helps you heal." For the first time in a long while she smiled, a small warm smile. Toby felt tears in his eyes. He took a step forward and said softly, "I only wanted someone who'd love me, not my father's money." Amara looked at him for a moment longer, then said gently, "And now you've found her." Toby's heart filled with relief. He wanted to hug her, but instead he simply said, "Thank you." They spent the rest of the evening talking not about the past but about what they had learned. They laughed again the way they used to, and it felt like a new beginning, simple, pure, and honest. In the weeks that followed, they continued to see each other. Toby introduced Amara to his father, who was impressed by her humility and strength. Together, Toby and Amara started a small project, a charity to help workers and young people in poor communities. They used Toby's resources to open workshops, sewing centers, and skill programs, giving others the same hope they once shared. When people asked them why they did it, Toby always said, "Because we were once on both sides of life, the rich and the poor, and we learned that dignity belongs to everyone." Their bond grew stronger not because of wealth or beauty, but because it was built on truth. They often sat together watching the sunset, remembering how their story had begun, with a lie but ending with love. One evening, Amara looked at Toby and said softly, "Do you ever regret pretending?" He shook his head. "No. Because if I hadn't, I might never have found you." She smiled. "Then maybe it was destiny disguised as foolishness." They both laughed. The wind blew gently, carrying the sound of laughter through the streets, the same streets where Toby had once been called the broke boy. But now he wasn't pretending anymore. He had found something greater than wealth. He had found truth, forgiveness, and a love that saw beyond appearances. As the evening grew quiet, Toby took Amara's hand and said, "No matter what life brings, I will never hide from you again." She smiled, her eyes shining softly. "And I will never stop believing in the good inside people." Their story was no longer about disguise or wealth. It was about the lessons learned when hearts meet beyond status and pride. And from that day on, everyone who met them could see it. That real love, the kind built on honesty and care, truly lasts forever.